Hello, let's continue our Sudoku adventure with The Equivocal Nature of Being by Randall. So this does begin our theme week for the month of April. Normally that would have started on Monday, but as you know, I was at SudokuCon and my computer was broken. I am back from SudokuCon and my computer is fixed. So all is well in the world again. And so we are just going to do a theme week from Tuesday through Monday. So we'll still do 7 puzzles for a theme week. It'll just be offset by a day. Now, what is the theme? The theme is ambiguity. So in every puzzle this week, there will be basically 2 kinds of constraints, and it will be ambiguous which is which, and it'll be up to us as solvers to determine which clue is which constraint. So it's not that we're trying to figure out, okay, are we actually dealing with X sums or sandwich sums? No, we're dealing with both, but we don't know which clue is which. So it could be that all the clues except one are sandwich and the other's X sum, or it could be even split half and half, or it could even be that all of them happen to be X sum. But it's up to us as solvers to determine which clue is which, because with ambiguity, eventually the ambiguity turns into, well, it would be impossible as this one, so it must be this other one. Cool. And unless the clues are going to say otherwise, this or is inclusive. So the clues could be both. I don't know if there's any puzzles this week where it's going to be otherwise, but assume they could be both unless the rules say so. All right, cool. Well, let's go over the rules to this puzzle. So we do have normal 6x6 Sudoku rules. So in each row, each column, and each 2x3 box, we are placing the digits 1 to 6 exactly once each. Now we do have these numbers outside the grid. Each of these numbers could be an X sum clue or a sandwich clue, or both. Now, if they're an X sum clue, the way that works is, let's take this 7, for example. Whatever digit is right next to the 7, let's say it's a 2, that tells you how many digits are involved in a sum to that clue, in this case, in a sum to 7. So if this is a 2, that means exactly 2 cells are involved in the sum, including the 2 itself, and so that would make this a 5, and 2 plus 5 is indeed 7. All right, so that is X sums. Now, sandwich sums, those sums, say this 14 is a sandwich sum, it indicates the sum of the digits that are placed in between the 1 and 6. So let's say the 1 ends up here and the 6 ends up over here. Then these 3 cells would add to 14. And I'm not going to, right now logic out what would add to 14. But basically, if you took the sum of these 3 digits, it would be 14 if the 1 and 6 were here, and if this was a sandwich clue. All right, a 0 sandwich clue. If this 0 is the sandwich clue, that just means that the 1 and 6 are next to each other. So that we're summing nothing, which is 0. 0 for X sum actually doesn't work. So that might be a little hint to get started on this puzzle, but I don't know if that actually gets you started. Anyway, those are the rules. There's a link in the description if you'd like to try the puzzle yourself. And I'm going to get started right now. So unfortunately, we don't have a great way to mark the outside of the grid. But for the purposes of our little video here, I am going to use this tool. If you look at my rules right now, you can see I have this little pen tool. It's a nice browser extension. I'm going to mark which clues are sandwich and which ones are X sum. So I'll just use, I'll just use red for sandwich. So I'll just underline this 0 here because we know this 0 is a sandwich clue. We don't quite know any of the others right now, but that's what I'm going to do so we can keep track. You could like color the first cell next to it, for example, as another way to do that. And I'll use I'll use a contrasting color. I'll use blue for sandwich. Sorry, for X sum. All right, so the other thing to think about is what number is too big to be a sandwich, right? So we know an entire row sums to 21, but we also know the sandwich clue needs to be between the 1 and 6. So the 1 and 6 use up 7 of that 21, meaning 14 is actually the biggest sum we can do. So if this 14 were a sandwich clue, we would have to make this a 1-6 pair, but we don't know that it's sandwich. It could be X sum, but this 15 and 16 are definitely X sum, because if they were sandwich, we would not be able to achieve that sum. And so these are definitely X sums, and they have to use a pretty large number of digits. Sometimes the easier thing to do when thinking about large digits is to think about the outies. What I mean by the outies is, let's say this was a 4 just for some random reason, and these 4 added to 15. The ones that aren't part of that 4, right? So if these added to, let's use blue for it. If these added to 15, then these 2 cells, which aren't part of the 15 sum, have to finish the rest of the 21 for the row. And so 21 minus 15 is 6, and so these would add to 6, which means we already know that we need to add to 6 starting from this right side in some way. So we could have a 6 here, which would be okay, right? Or we could have these two add to 6, or we could even do a 1, 2, 3 here, which would cause these 3 to add to 6. However, I do see a problem with doing 1, 2, 3. Do you see the problem? The problem is that x sum would use these 3, which would require a 3 here. And so we wouldn't be able to make the remaining 3 add to 6. So actually, this has to be 4 or 5. Now, the 16 has an outie of 5, which definitely can only be these two cells. So that's 4 or 5. Now, interestingly, because the outie of the 16 is 5, if we did a 5 on its own, we would then need these 5 cells to add to 16. But that would require this to be a 5. And so because the outies sum to 5, 5 actually isn't possible. Very interesting. So this has to be 4, this has to be 5. Now that we know all 5 of these are adding to 15, we just have to stick a 6 here. And then we also know that these two add to 5. Sorry, I'm getting myself confused here. In order to make these add to 16. So for these to add to 16, these add to 5, which is going to be either 1, 4 or 2, 3. The 4 is already used by our length, so it has to be 2, 3. And so the remaining digits here are 1, 4, 5, and we can see that the 5 has to be placed there. All right. Now this is going to be a pair, and this is going to be a pair. So let's fill those out. This is 2, 3, and this is 1, 6. All right. I'm going to green any cells that we know must be sandwich ends, the 1s and 6s. We know one of these is a sandwich end, but we don't quite know which yet. But that does mean we know this 0 clue is a sandwich clue. And so this has to be the 1 in order to not have a sum of 0, because this can't be the 1. And so this sandwich clue is now fulfilled. Okay, so now if this was 14, this would have to be a 6. That seems viable. If it was an x sum, well, certainly this can't be a 1 if it was an x sum. So we are actually a sandwich clue. So let's mark ourselves as, let's mark ourselves as sandwich here. And then this will just fill itself because 21 minus 7 is 14. Alrighty. Can we achieve this 7 is the question I want to ask. 7 is really interesting for x sums. It obviously can't be a 1. It could be a 2. We showed that in our example. 2, 5 works. It can't actually be a 3 because in order to sum to 7 in 3 cells, you have to do 1, 2, 4, which doesn't use the 3. So that doesn't work. And then 4 is a minimum of 10. So this 7, if it were an x sum, would have to be 2 with a 5 after it. That would be 2, 5. Now, I can't rule that out necessarily. However, this 14, I can rule out sandwich because the 6 has been placed here. So this is most definitely an x sum. Sandwich was red. Sorry, I messed up my 14 here. This is red. I got confused about my colors. Anyway, this is definitely an x sum. So how many digits do I need to sum to 14? Well, my outie is 7. And 7 isn't a digit on its own. So either these 2 or these 3 add to 7. Now, it is actually possible for me to do a 1, 2, 4 here as my outies, and then this would be a 3. That would be perfect. We can double check our math. 9 plus 5 is 14. So that would be one option. The other option would be to, well, actually, we can't be 4, 5, or 6 long, so I guess we are a 3. Right. I was going to say the other option is to make this a 4, and then these two just need to add to 7, but that clearly doesn't work. The 4 is already used. So this is 3 with a 1, 2 there. Get a nice 3 in the corner. Okay. 3 does work as an x sum for 8. Let's see if it works in this specific situation. I think it does. We would need to involve a 1 because any 3 cell sum to 8 involves a 1 because 2, 3, 4 is 9. And so now that we have 1 and 3 that adds to 4, we would just need a 4. So this could be a 1, 4 pair, making it an x sum. If it was a sandwich adding to 8, I don't really see a restriction on that at the moment. So we don't know yet. We get any other information here. This 7 could still be 2, 5, but we don't know it has to be, right? Sorry, the x sum could be 2, 5. The 7 could be 2, 5 as an x sum. And then as a sandwich, well, we can't do the sandwich this way because we use 7s. And so we'd have to do the sandwich exactly like this. This would be 1 and 6. And then this would add to 7. So we'd either be 2, 5 or 3, 4. So interestingly, this cell here, whether we're an x sum or a sandwich, Well, could be. So if we're an X sum, this cell here is a 5, and if we're a sandwich, we know this is involved in our sandwich sum. It's either 2, 5, or 3, 4. So this is always a 4 or a 5 for what that's worth. I feel like I'm missing something obvious. How about the 5 sum? So something that's calling out to me is put a 1 here, put a 6 here, and make this a 2, 3 pair, right? So that's obviously one way we could do it. There's probably many other ways. For example, the 1 here, the 6 here, and then make that a 5 would work. But let's think about the X sum. So sandwich, it obviously works in several ways. For the X sum, if it was a 2, then this would have to be a 3, and that breaks this cell. And if it's a 3, then 3 cells can't add to 5. 1, 2, 3 is already 6. So this can't actually be an X sum, so this is a sandwich. So let's mark this as a sandwich. That's a sandwich clue. All right. And, what about the 10 then? Well, this being 1 or 2 excludes 10 from being a X sum, so 10 is definitely a sandwich. Just haven't looked at that yet. So the only thing we haven't figured out is this 8 and 7 for sandwich or X sum. Oh, I haven't thought about the consequence of making this a 1-4 pair for this 7. So if this was a 1-4 pair, in order to make this an X sum, so if 8 is an X sum, this is 3, 1, 4. Now for the 7, that means it has to be a sandwich. And so this would actually be the 1 and a 6, and then this would be 2, 5, or 3, 4. So actually that works quite nicely. Now if this was a sandwich, I still don't know. All right, what am I missing here? So we know the 5 is a sandwich. We know the 10 is a sandwich. We can think about the sandwich outies for 10, right? Because the sandwich itself, the 1 and 6, the crusts are going to use the 7. 1 plus 6 is 7. That uses up 7 already. And then the insides are going to be 10. So that's 17. So to get to 21 from 17, that's 4 more. So our outies would be either a 4 on its own or a 1 and a 3. Well, you can't have the outie include a 1. So it would have to be a 4 on its own. So if this 10 clue is a sandwich, we actually, our only option is to make this a 1-6 sandwich and then put a 4 here. Oh, and it is a sandwich. Right, we already determined it was a sandwich. So that's actually what we have to do. Because the outie 4 can't be here, so the outie 4 has to be on the other side. And then this is our 6, 1, and 2. These are green because they're sandwich ends. And so now that we know this is a sandwich end, we do need to go up here and make this a 2, 3 pair. That's what was calling to me, so I'm glad my instinct was right. Anyway, we resolve all those digits. This is also a sandwich end. All right, so these cannot be sandwich ends. This is 4, 5. These are 2, 3. Oh, and this 3 tells us the order. That resolves a lot of 2, 3s. All right. So now what? The 2 is used in this column now. So this cannot be X sum. This has to be sandwich. And so because it's sandwich, then I do believe, our only option was to make this 1, 6, 1, and then this has to be a 5. That's 4 and 5. All right. This one is a sandwich end. Did I miss any? 1, 6. We need a 6 in here. Certainly not going to go there. There's already 6 in the column, so that's our green. 6, 1, 6. Okay, I need a 6 in this box, which goes here. Oops. The 6 goes there, and the 1 goes there. All right. Cool. So I have all my sandwich ends. I think we can just finish this. 1, 2, 3. We need 4, 5 for this column. We need a 3, 4, 4, 3 there. We need a 2 there. We need a 5 there, and we need a 2 there, and we're done. All right, so the 8 did end up being an X sum clue, not a sandwich clue. All right, cool. I wish this tool could remember 2 different colors. That would definitely be nice. But anyway, yeah, that was a neat puzzle, Randall. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed thinking about the options there. I liked, I don't even know if this was a real step or not, but I liked being able to pencil a 4, 5 in this cell, because no matter what, whether 7 ended up being a sandwich or an X sum, this ended up being a 5. So yeah, that was pretty neat. Cool. Yeah, let's let's look forward to the rest of the theme week. There's going to be ambiguity in all of them, and the constructors could pick any 2 constraints they wanted for the ambiguity. So it'll be interesting to see the creativity there. And if you enjoyed this, why not leave a like, subscribe, and a kind comment below.